Hi everyone, I have some more stupid from humansarefree.com. Apparently, the moon is a spaceship. Which is not that far-fetched. I mean, the Jews had to get here somehow, right? I can't believe I'm still not even starting to get tired of space Jew jokes. It's okay. Here's sorry. Here's the evidence that the moon is a spaceship. The moon is the eye in the sky to the inhabitants of Earth. It provides us with the natural tidal cycles which are said to maintain the equilibrium of all species on the planet. I don't even know what that means. Peculiarly, certain phases of the moon cycle are even known to affect our moods and emotions. That is bullshit. That's a myth. There's absolutely no science to back that up. It's all anecdotal. The whole, people go crazy when the full moon is out. No. Most will likely never question the existence or makeup of the moon. Well, I think we all know it's made of green cheese, right? As it does its usual routine, blah, 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 blah. Much controversy exists around the origin and makeup of the moon today. If by much you mean virtually none, then yeah. And one of the largest arguments surrounding... Damn, this cough just won't give up. One of the largest arguments surrounding the satellite is the solidity, or lack thereof, of its center, which is a small, solid iron core. This is not in dispute. So, where's this... If that's the largest argument, then I wonder what the smallest one is. And the process by which we got our moon in the first place. Yeah, we don't know. But there are... yeah, we're gonna get to that, by the way. I've actually read this and taken some notes in advance this time. So I'm gonna try not to get as many things wrong as last time. Besides, this is not about biology, so I'm probably safe anyway. Currently, there are around 5 widely discussed theories of moon formation. There's actually one. They are as follows. 1. Capture. This theory proposes that the moon was captured by the gravitational pull of the Earth. Okay. Yeah, they're going to mention a problem with that one. The capture mechanism. Yeah, that's not the only problem. The biggest problem is that we would then expect isotope ratios to be very different in the Earth and the Moon, and they're not, indicating that they formed together, or that the Moon actually formed from pieces of the Earth, or something to that effect. So capture has been virtually ruled out. 2. Fission, yeah. Well, this explains the isotope thing, but here's the idea is that the moon just broke off from the Earth. The Earth was spinning so fast when it just formed, that when it was still forming, that is, that basically the moon just broke off due to centrifugal force, and that would require a very ridiculous angular velocity. So, no, it's not realistic. Accretion. This hypothesis states that the Earth and the Moon formed together as a double system from the primordial accretion disk of the solar system. The problem with this hypothesis is that it does not explain the angular momentum of the Earth-Moon system, or why the Moon has a relatively small iron core compared to the Earth. Well, yeah. Note that it is stated here that it has a small iron core. It's about 25% of the Moon's radius compared to 50% for the Earth. I haven't checked those numbers. I think it's about right. But we're in agreement that the Moon does have a small solid iron core. They didn't say solid, but, well, it would be solid due to the pressure. So, I guess yeah. They're going to go on to say that the moon is hollow later on, so. 4. Georeactor explosion. I hadn't heard of this one, actually. A more radical alternative hypothesis published in 2010 proposes that the moon may have formed from the explosion of a georeactor located along the core mantle boundary at the equatorial plane of a rapidly rotating Earth. Basically a natural nuke going off, an uncontrolled chain reaction of nuclear fission. Sounds a bit far-fetched, but possible. And I haven't done research into this, but off the top of my head, I don't see why this could be ruled out. What I can say is that there's absolutely not one shred of evidence to support it, but I think this is the best one so far. Because I can't immediately rule it out. All I can say is, really, what? I think it's a bit, yeah, it's a bit far-fetched, but not at all impossible, to my knowledge. 5. The giant impact theory. I don't know if it qualifies as a theory. It's usually referred to as a hypothesis. This was the most commonly accepted theory up until recently. If by the summer of 2014, after this was written, you mean, yeah, up until recently. Because it's still the most probable, it's still regarded as the most probable explanation. And for one source, here you have one. And unlike these morons, I cite peer-reviewed sources. This theory suggests that long ago a planetary body the size of Mars crashed into Earth, expelling a large piece of mass into space that became our moon. While this hypothesis explains many aspects of the Earth-Moon system, there are still a few unresolved problems facing it. True. None of these actually contradict the hypothesis. It's more like it's not what we'd expect, but it's not impossible. The moon's volatile elements are not as depleted as expected from such an energetic impact. Isotope comparisons, we'd expect there to be chunks of this other planet in the moon, and the Theia, it's been named, but we haven't really found that. It looks like it comes entirely from Earth. But then this guy comes along this summer and says that actually there are traces that are different from Earth, but it's a very small amount, so it's not quite what we'd expect. It's certainly not like this source settles the discussion, but it definitely gives support to the hypothesis. Unfortunately, none of the previous theories provide answers to the big questions surrounding the moon's origins, such as, and by the way, unanswered questions does not mean false model. What is apparent, however, is the number of strange facts about the moon which conjure up many hmms about its existence. Let's take a look at some of them, and now it's going to get a little funny, I hope. 1. The moon's age. The moon is far older than previously expected, maybe even older than the Earth or the Sun. The oldest age for the Earth is estimated, measured, to be 4.6 billion years old. That's rounded up a bit. Moon rocks were dated at 5.3 billion years old, and the dust upon which they were resting was at least another billion years older. The dust upon which they were resting, I thought the dust that rested upon the rocks, oh whatever. So the moon is supposed to be 6.3 billion years old, and the source cited is the author's ass. 4.527 billion years, according to this peer-reviewed source from 2005. Some argue that the moon may seem older because its surface never renews itself, whereas the Earth may have rocks that are that old but have since been recycled through the natural resurfacing of the planet. Source cited, and guess what? It's a moon hoaxer book. Let's see, it's called Apollo and the Whistleblowers or something like that. Yeah, Bennett and Percy. Dark Moon, Apollo and the Whistleblowers. So yeah, they're not citing any source. Once again, pulled straight out of ass. 2. Rock's origin. The chemical composition of the dust upon which the rocks sat differed remarkably from the rocks themselves, contrary to accepted theories that the dust resulted from weathering and breakup of the rocks themselves. The rocks had to come from somewhere else. Well, you know, meteor impacts. Boom! Crap flies out and lands in place. You know, there's really nothing strange about that. Heavier elements on the surface. Normal planetary composition results in heavier elements in the core and lighter materials at the surface. Not so with the moon. Yes, so with the moon, but you see, this is a trend. You'll find that most of the heavy elements are deep down, just like with any other planetary body. And guess what? Even on other planetary bodies, on Earth, there are heavier elements on or near the surface. Where do you think we mine for stuff? It's pretty near the surface, and we find heavy elements here as well. But the trend is that heavy stuff goes to the bottom. In other words, it's in the center. That's a trend. 4. Water vapor. On March 7th, 1971, lunar instruments placed by the astronauts recorded a vapor cloud of water passing across the surface of the moon. The cloud lasted 14 hours and covered an area of about 100 square miles. So, 5. Magnetic rocks. Maybe I should explain this. So, I have nothing more to say. Just so. 5. Magnetic rocks. Moon rocks were magnetized. This is odd because there's no magnetic field on the moon itself. So, that doesn't mean there can't be magnetic materials on the moon. There have been many theories that aim to explain this magnetism, however they all still sit as theories, so we're in agreement that it can be explained then. And that it even qualifies as theories, so these are very good explanations that are supported by evidence, by your own admission, so shut up. 6. Seismic activity. Hundreds of moonquakes are recorded each year that cannot be attributed to meteor strikes. True. It's because of tides. The moon's orbit is not perfectly circular, so sometimes it's closer to the Earth, and then it's pulled out slightly by the Earth's gravity. and when it goes further away, it contracts slightly, but it's enough that it can be measured. The seismic activity caused by it can be measured. So we have one of these.
Gravity!
I thought that was appropriate. These observations have proved to be precisely identical and periodical, repeating themselves as the moon moves closer to the Earth. These are probably not natural phenomena. So tides are not natural phenomena, is what you're saying. Wow. You even explain that they occur as the moon moves closer to the Earth, and, well, closer to and further away from. 7. Hollow moon. The moon's mean density is 3.34 grams per cubic centimeter, whereas the Earth's is 5.5. What does this mean? Well, it means that the moon's iron core is smaller, as we've already covered. No. It's because the moon is hollow, which means it can't be a natural satellite, because Carl Sagan said that a natural satellite can't be a hollow object. Well, it's not hollow. And my memory card appears to be full. Be right back. Okay, where were we? Moon echoes. On November 20th, 1969, the Apollo 12 crew jettisoned the lunar module ascent stage, causing it to crash onto the moon. This created an artificial moonquake with startling characteristics. The moon reverberated like a bell for more than an hour. Did you notice? They acknowledged the existence of the moon, well, at least the Apollo project. These are conspirators. Aren't they supposed to be moon hoaxers? This phenomenon was repeated with Apollo 13. Yeah, that's actually one of the successful experiments they did, because they did drop some crap on the moon. Even though they never made it to... even though they never landed. Seismic instruments placed there by astronauts that apparently existed. Recorded that the reverberations lasted for 3 hours and 20 minutes and traveled deep to a depth of 25 miles. I believe it was actually more than that, a lot more, I think. Leading to the conclusion that the moon was unusually has an unusually light or even no core. That's the exact opposite of the conclusion that was drawn. To put it into perspective, when the Earth experiences a large earthquake, the reverberations from the quake usually only last minutes due to the density of the planet. It's not due to the density of the planet, it's due to chemical weathering. See, there's something on Earth that affects rocks that can't really affect the rocks on the moon because they're never exposed to it on the moon, and that is liquid water. So it's basically a case of, you know, if I exaggerate it a bit, Earth rocks look a bit like sponges, and that makes them squishy relative to a moon rock. I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but it's sufficient that Earth rocks are more compressible, and that causes energy to dissipate during an earthquake. This doesn't happen on the moon, where everything is just bone dry, completely rigid. So the moon vibrates longer when a quake occurs. This was expected. Moon's origin, number 9. Before the astronauts' moon rocks conclusively disproved the theory, it didn't, the moon was believed to have originated when a chunk of the Earth broke off eons ago. Another theory was that the moon was created from leftover space dust. Remaining after the Earth was created. Analysis of the composition of moon rocks disproved this also. Yeah, haven't we covered this already? They don't mention the impact hypothesis, which is really the only one that has anything going for it, as I said. Weird orbit. Our moon is the only moon in the solar system that has a stationary near perfect circular orbit. I'm sorry, on what Earth are you living? The moon's orbit is not stationary. As for near perfect circular orbit, as noticed, it is still elliptical. As noted, sorry. That's true. I don't have anything there off the top of my head, but if you want a moon that is stationary and has a near perfect circular orbit, I think, well, at least a stationary one, Charon, Pluto's largest moon, is stationary. It always faces Pluto. Pluto and Charon go like this. They always turn the same side toward each other. The moon is tidally locked with the Earth in that it always faces us the same way, but the Earth doesn't always face the moon the same way, so the moon's orbit is not stationary. That's what a stationary orbit is. Stranger still, the moon's center of mass is about 6,000 feet closer to the Earth than its geometric center, which should cause wobbling. Yes, if it weren't for the fact that it's tidally locked. The moon's bulge is on the far side of the moon, away from the Earth, and that's called centrifugal force. Well, if we observe it from a before we get the whole centrifugal versus centripetal thing going, if we regard the Earth as stationary and we're looking at the moon and it's going around, if the coordinate system rotates along with the Earth and we're looking at the moon in a non-inertial frame of reference, that's what I'm trying to say. And then there is such a thing as centrifugal force, and that's the easiest way I find to talk about these things. So we would expect a bulge on the far side of the moon. It seems that something must have put the moon in orbit with this precise altitude, course, and speed. Well, something did. What did? What meme could we possibly use?
Gravity, you f***ing retard! Gravity! Have you ever heard of f***ing gravity? Gravity!
11. Moon diameter. How does one explain the coincidence that the moon is just the right distance coupled with just the right diameter to completely cover the sun during an eclipse? Well, first of all, it doesn't. You can actually see some of the sun around it. And there's absolutely no reason why it needs an explanation. But what you fail to consider is that we know that this is temporary, because the moon used to be closer to us and then it was larger than the sun as seen from our point of view, and it's moving away, so we're alive at the time when this is actually the case. It's not going to be the case in the future. It wasn't the case in the past. What you should be asking is, how do we explain the coincidence that we happen to be alive right now? Well, the answer is it's a coincidence. There's really nothing strange about coincidences like that. Well, they're interesting observations, they're oddities, but there's nothing strange about it, and it doesn't mean that the moon is a spaceship. Me being alive right now does not constitute evidence that the moon is a spaceship. The moon in mythology. Theories about the moon actually date back thousands of years, as various cultures and civilizations discuss the story of how it came to be where it resides today. No, theories are no older than science, and science didn't really get started until the Renaissance. You mean myths, stories, people making shit up. Greek authors Aristotle and Plutarch, and Roman authors Apollonius, Rhodius, and Ovid all wrote about a group of people called the Proselenes, I think that's how it's pronounced anyway, who lived in the central mountainous area of Greece called Arcadia. The Proselenes claimed title to this area because their forebears were there before there was a moon in the heavens. Now that sounds like nothing more than a poetic way to say, go away, we were here first. This claim is substantiated by symbols on the wall of the courtyard of Kalasasaya, I think it's pronounced, near the city of Tiahuanaco, I think, Bolivia, which record that the moon came into orbit around the Earth between 11,500 and 13,000 years ago, long before recorded history. So, in other words, it was recorded before history was being recorded, which means it sounds like something that has been made up. Zulu shaman Credo Mutwa said that Zulu legends believe the moon to be hollow and the home of the python, or Chitauri, or as David Icke calls them, enough said. I actually looked for this, and this doesn't seem like it's a Zulu legend, because all mentions of it can be traced back to Credo Mutwa. And David Icke. So, I'm going to completely dismiss this. I don't even think this is mythology. I think it's made up mythology. As in, no one ever actually believed this stuff. Except now, you know, people like Jordan probably believe it. So it doesn't really count as mythology. But even if it were mythology, let's say it is. Let's say that I just didn't find any source that accurately portrays this as part of Zulu mythology. It's still just mythology. So, we know better today. We've sent seismic waves deep into the moon. We know it has a solid interior. So the legend must be wrong. Could it be true? No. Outrageous as the spacecraft moon theory might... It's not a theory. Might first appear, consider how this model reconciles all the mysteries of the moon. It doesn't. It doesn't explain, for example, why it's not anything like a spaceship. I mean, it looks an awful lot like a natural satellite in every conceivable way, and that's one mystery it doesn't explain. It actually creates a mystery. It doesn't explain a mystery. It explains why the moon gives evidence of being older than the Earth. It doesn't. And perhaps even our solar system. Bullshit. And why there are 3 distinct layers within the moon. Yeah, why are there layers within the moon? With the densest materials on the outside layer. That's the exact opposite of how it's actually structured. As one would expect of the hull of a spacecraft. Okay, the heavy stuff is inside. The iron core is in the middle. That's why it's called the core. And how do we explain the layered structure?
Gravity!
It could also explain why no sign of water has been found on the moon's surface, yet there is evidence it exists deep inside. Yes, but how does the spaceship theory explain that? I mean, we know why there can't be any, at least liquid water in on the outside. I don't know why there can't be any frozen water on the outside. I haven't really given that any thought, but well, yeah, of course, it would melt during exposure to sunlight, and then it would just drift off. Now, yeah. In vacuum, water doesn't become a liquid, I think. Well, basically, if it melts, it boils. I don't have the figures in, right off the top of my head, but you don't basically you don't get liquid water in a vacuum. That's the point I'm trying to make. Perhaps the remnants of this theory would also it's not a theory. Would also explain the strange Moria and Mascons, perhaps the remnants of the machinery used to hollow out the moon. But the moon isn't hollow, and it wouldn't explain any of that. And how are these remnants of machinery? What are you talking about? The idea of an artificial satellite could explain the odd rhythmic moonquakes? No, it actually couldn't. As artificial constructs reacting the same way during periods of stress from the Earth's pull. Oh, so only artificial constructs react to tides, is what you're saying. This is a textbook violation of Occam's razor. Natural materials would react that way because of the stress. Artificial ones would also react that way. Therefore, it's more credible that they are artificial. What? Despite the fact that we have no evidence of that. Yeah, that's a textbook violation of Occam's razor. It's also impossible because the moon is not a spaceship! A scientist called Irwin I. Shapiro, who works at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, said, looking at the anomalies, misspelled, and unanswered questions about the moon, the best explanation for the moon is observational error. It doesn't exist. This seems to be a guy who's actually legit, but I need context, and no source is provided. So I think this is a mind quote. It's probably a joke. Sort of. Yeah, it's so weird. The best explanation is that I guess it's not there. Ah! I don't know. I need context. Strange anomalies on the moon. This is actually funny. The following strange structures and happenings further propagate the mystery surrounding the moon. First, ages of flashes. Aristarchus, Plato, Eratosthenes, Biela, Rabbi Levi. An actual alien. And Posidonius all reported anomalous lights on the moon. NASA, 1 year before the first lunar landing, I'm still shocked that you acknowledge the lunar landings, reported 570 plus lights and flashes were observed on the moon from 1540 to 1967. This is an example, this is what's called transient lunar phenomena. And we don't currently have an explanation for them. It's probably a number of different things that actually coincide and contribute to this. For one, these only seem to happen when observing the moon from the Earth, so it could be a case of the Earth's atmosphere messing with us. And we never see a single case of this light being observed from one guy way over here and another guy way over here, and both see it in the same location on the moon. That doesn't happen. it's only one guy here can see it over there on the moon, and then it could be that there's some crap in the atmosphere between him and the moon. So we haven't been able to rule out atmospheric interference. It could also be that there are phenomena on the moon, like outgassing, for example. There's a moonquake and some gas escapes from inside and refracts the sunlight. It could be the flash of a meteor impact. There could, I don't know, this is something I read, but I'm not sure how credible it is, but some electrostatic phenomena, some sort of interaction between the solar wind and dust on the moon. Sounds a little far-fetched, but I don't know. But the point is, there are many possible explanations, and we just don't have enough knowledge to say this. But here's the thing. Let's say the moon is a spaceship. How does that explain it? So it's irrelevant then. Thank you. Operation Moonblink, yeah, that was an attempt to record these, and it concluded that, yeah, we have recorded some lights. So in other words, nothing. The Shard, 3. The Shard, an obelisk-shaped object that towers 1.5 miles from the Youkurt area of the moon's surface, was discovered by Orbiter 3 in 1968. Yeah, here's a picture of it. As you can see, it's one of these things like the face on Mars that you can only see on grainy images, low-res grainy pictures that have been zoomed into so much that basically you can see whatever you want to see. It doesn't exist on high-definition modern pictures. The tower, yeah, same thing there. The obelisks, yeah, same thing there. We're talking about things that can only be seen in bad photos. The spires were arranged in precisely the same apices as the 3 Great Pyramids. The subject of the moon is a touchy one for many. Any suggestion of the moon not being what we're told is usually followed by accusations of conspiracy and pseudoscience. No, but bad science is. And I'm not accusing anyone of any conspiracy. I am accusing you of thinking that accusing people of conspiracies is an explanation. That's what I'm accusing you of. And this is definitely pseudoscience. Although there may be many theories that aim to debunk all aspects of this theory, it's not a theory, there are too many factors that still don't add up, such as, how is it that seemingly unconnected ancient cultures have their own version of the artificial moon myth? Probably the same reason why so many ancient cultures thought the sun was a deity. I mean, it's just, it's there. And people make up stories. Is it strange that when you have a lot of people making up stories that sometimes they will match? I mean, no. There's nothing strange about that. Why are there unexplained geometric structures on the surface of the moon? There aren't. Which correlate with structures found in Egypt and other primitive locations. Yeah. There aren't. How is it that by miraculous chance the moon perfectly eclipses the sun? Covered it. NASA is a government agency. Government agencies are known to have a history of information concealment from the general public. Questioning NASA's story isn't ludicrous. But you see, there are a couple of problems here. First of all, I agree that questioning the story that they come up with is not at all ludicrous. It should be questioned. But it's not just NASA. It's all of science. It's the scientific community. You know, NASA's scientists are not the only ones looking at the moon. And also, even NASA's scientists submit to peer review, like any other scientist. So if you look in the peer-reviewed literature, it doesn't matter if you trust NASA or not. What matters is, do you understand the method? So don't blame this on NASA and say, oh, NASA's lying. No, that has nothing to do with it. Even if they are, well, they lie well enough to fool the entire world, the scientific community, and they you know, everything in their articles checks out so that it gets through peer review, and that scrutiny is nasty, and it gets through. So I guess the entire scientific community has to be in on it. Yeah, either that, or it actually does hold up. Maybe you should get an education and check it out yourself if you don't trust the scientific community. But no, that's out of the question, of course. Because getting an education would just be brainwashing. I mean, if you know what you're talking about, you obviously don't know what you're talking about. That follows logically, right? Oh, wait. Nevertheless, we are left simply curious, as no one can currently complete the narrative of the moon's origin. So how about doing some science instead of just, you know, spreading mistrust of the scientific method? Help out instead. No? No, it's much more fun to hinder progress than to actually help out. Yeah, sure. We encourage you to think outside the box in this regard, as history and mainstream science provide only a limited perspective on the matter. Yeah, it's limited to what's actually... well, it's limited to what checks out. That's a good thing. The alternative is making shit up, like you're doing. Perhaps George Lucas was onto something after all. No! George Lucas was on something when he made up Jar Jar Binks, but... just... no. Okay, well, that was stupid. I hope I didn't make as many errors this time. I probably did. See ya.